Good evening, dear students. Today we will discuss about an important topic, that is immunization. This time I am using a PowerPoint to teach you the basics of immunization. Why is it? Because if I just take a class, you may not understand it fully. So I really acknowledge the help received from the IEP Kerala group of 2019 when immunization was a presidential action plan. Really thanking the President Santosh sir of 2019 and Secretary Dr. Balachandra sir. They actually have taken a great effort in making the point of this, along with so many eminent faculties of IAP. This class was taken by Shija madam when I had attended the TOT. It was so impressive class. And when we had this TOT in our branch, I had taken this class on basics. And now many people have asked actually for this repeat class. So hence I thought I'll take a class and put it into the Zoom and share it with you. Make notes and listen carefully to the class. Once you understand the basics, then we will go into the individual vaccines in subsequent videos. So hence I start my class now. So now we start with the basics of immunization and beyond it. So there was a slight problem that got hanged. Thanks for the help received from my children. They only came and corrected it. So what is meant by immunization? Immunization is the process of inducing immunity either by administering a vaccine, that is actually the active way, or by administering preformed antibodies, that is called the passive immunity. Okay, so this is called the immunization, but this is what is called as immunization. So what do you mean by a vaccine? So vaccine is a complex biological substance that imparts adaptive immunity against a particular disease. So now let us discuss the components of a vaccine. So vaccine, as you all know, will contain an antigen. It may be antigen, may be an attenuated organism. It may be a toxoid. So what is a toxoid? It is a modified or purified toxin is called a toxoid. It can have a killed organism or a subunit organism, etc. It may have adjuvants like alum, 21018, etc. What is the importance of this adjuvant and other things we'll be discussing soon in the further slides. Stabilizers like lysine, gelatin, MSG, sucrose, etc. may be there. Preservatives like thimerosal, phenol, formaldehyde may be contained in the vaccine, and they may also have some manufacturing residues like neomycin. Now, I have one question out here. Can you name any two vaccines where the adjuvants are used? And what are the advantages and disadvantages of adjuvant? So for this, you have to understand what is the adjuvant and other things. This DPT and hepatitis B are two vaccines where terms of two vaccines where adjuvants are used. And coming to the advantages and disadvantages, to understand the advantage and disadvantage, first you should know that once we are giving a vaccine, it is taken in by the dendritic cells taken into the linea, the lymph nodes, and the inflammatory process are activated. So advantages, they increase the effective particle size and also the immunogenicity of the antigen, and also this increase the stability of the vaccines. What are the disadvantages? Disadvantage means this adjuvants, once you add, it will increase the cost, and this can be frozen. Such vaccines where we add an adjuvants, we cannot freeze it. Now let us discuss about how the immune system acts. To understand that, we should know that the immune system has two components. One is the primary lymphoid organ, another thing is the secondary lymphoid organ. Primary lymphoid means thymus, bone marrow, etc. And secondary means lymph nodes, spleen, gut, mucosal lymph tissue, etc. So we have two types of immune mechanism. One is a non-specific immunity. Another thing is a specific immunity. What do we mean by this non-specific is? It is innate. Another name of it is innate immunity. And specific immunity is otherwise called as the adaptive immunity. Here, we have to know the difference between what is an innate and what is an adaptive. Innate, as I told you, it is an antigen independent thing. So this is actually comprised by skin, mucous membrane, phagocytes, complements, etc. Once any antigen comes to our contact with our body, immediate response will be there in case of an innate immunity. So this antigen, this immunity is antigen independent and not specific. Okay. Whereas adaptive immunity means that is dependent on the antigens. The antigen dependent, very specific, and also induces the memory T cell. Here we should understand that this will have a memory or booster will be there in case of adaptive immunity. It is compromised by our B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. I have been discussing this in detail is first you should understand the basics of immunity or immunization and then we will go into the details. That's right. So these are the cellular components as I've told you, B lymphocytes, T lymphocytes, antigen presenting cells, etc. What are the cellular components in details? Antigen presenting cells means macrophages. Then T cells means some cytotoxic T cells or T helper T cells. And also B cells. B cells are the ones which actually make the antibody and also helps in making the memory cells. Okay. Now let us now discuss how a vaccine can act. So first, once you give a vaccine, what happens is there is migration of antigen presenting cells into the site. This will take the, so you can see from here, once a vaccine is given, this vaccine will be taken up by the antigen presenting cells antigen presenting cells will take, see here the vaccine is given, it is taken by the dendritic cells, macrophages, etc. and taken to the regional lymph nodes. See here. So this vaccine is taken from here and taken by the dendritic cell and taken to the regional lymph nodes. This will stimulate the B lymphocytes to produce the IgM antibody, IgA and low affinity IgG antibody. So this is how a vaccine will act. This thing we should know it very clearly to understand about the polysaccharide and the conjugate vaccine, which will come in detailed session later. So this is B cells and T cells. See here, antigen is taken up by the specific antigen specific B cell receptors taken by the B cells. Then the B cells will get converted. Otherwise also it will convert it to plasma cell, but with the help of activated helper T cells, more and more number of plasma cells are produced and more antibodies are produced. That is how the interaction of B cells and T helper cells plays a great role in the stimulation of more and more antibodies. This is our activated helper T cells. You know here, see here, helper T cells, which also helps in the two types of T cells, helper T cells and cytotoxic T cells. Helper T cells will stimulate the B lymphocytes, make more and more plasma cells and also the memory cells. And when cytotoxic T cells, it will kill the infected cells. Now, let us now discuss the types of vaccines. Very important. Please note it very carefully here. We have live attenuated vaccines, we have killed vaccines, we have toxoids, which I already mentioned are modified or purified toxins, or we have subunit thing. Now coming to the live vaccines, we have live attenuated viral and bacterial. Live attenuated viral means MMR, MMRV, rotavirus, varicella, influenza, oral polio vaccine, etc. Live attenuated bacterial is our BCG, Salmonella typhi, CY21A, that is an oral strain actually. Then coming to the killed vaccine. Kill vaccine is our rabies, Japanese encephalitis, hepatitis A, hepatitis B, etc. Please note here that live vaccines are there for hepatitis A, which has come, and even for Japanese B encephalitis. Killed bacterial vaccines include Vibrio vaccine and Bacillus pertussis vaccine. Toxoid or modified or purified toxin, that is we have two. We have a diphtheria toxoid and also tetanus toxoid. Subunits vaccines are many types. We have polysaccharide vaccines like meningococcal vaccine, pneumococcal vaccine, influenza vaccine, typhoid vaccines, etc. We have conjugate vaccines like meningococcal, again, same things which gets conjugated with a protein carrier, that is a meningococcal conjugate vaccines and other ones. Recombinant vaccines include acellular pertussis vaccine, hepatitis B, papillomavirus vaccine, etc. Coming to a few clinical case scenarios. A 3-month-old child who received a Pentavac dose on 10 February is brought for second dose on 6 March. Can he or she receive the vaccine and why? Everybody, whether it is students or whether it is PG, whoever are practicing this, we should know this very carefully, is that the gap between the vaccines. Please note here, 10 February when you are given a dose, 4 weeks are not elapsed before 6 March. So we cannot give this vaccine. The child will not be able to, we should not be giving the vaccine to the child because 4 weeks have not elapsed. So 2 doses of the same kill vaccine must be separated by at least 4 weeks. Suppose the child has taken a vaccine 5 or repeat dose 5 or more days before the recommended interval or age, then that vaccine is invalid. So the take home message out here is minimum 4 weeks gap should be there between the 2 doses of the same kill vaccine. So here you can see, once you give an antigen, there will be a primary response. There will be some effector cells and some memory pole cells. Okay. Once second antigen exposure occurs, there is a secondary response, and there are lots and lots of effector cells and also memory pole cells. So that is the difference between a primary response and a secondary response. So we give always an interval between the vaccine doses. This will allow each immune response to develop very much fully. See here, after the primary response, just smaller amounts of antibodies are produced, but memory cells are produced. Once the secondary response or secondary exposure or the next exposure happens, the body responds very fast and also with larger amounts of antibody production. So this is the principles. Okay. Now let us discuss the scenario 2. A 3-month-old child who received Pentavac last week is brought for IPV. Can she or he receive it? This we encounter always, because suppose we have given the patient has got a Pentavac in the government private sector, going to a government sector for a fractional IPV. Next day or next week, can he or she receive it? Yes. What's the response? See here, the patient can receive it because there are 2 different vaccines. One is the Pentavac, another thing is an IPV. Yes, we can give it at any time before or after any vaccine. So different kill vaccines can be administered at any time before and after the vaccine. So in this case, the patient can receive the Pentavac or can be given the IPV despite receiving the Pentavac last week. Coming to case scenario 3, a 15-month-old baby who had received MMR 2 weeks back is now brought for routine varicella vaccination. Can he or she receive it? So please understand, these are MMR and varicella are live vaccines. So once you give a live vaccine, so how is the immune response? So once you give a live vaccine, what happens is the body response all throughout our lymph node system, every immune system is activated, and hence we cannot give 2 viral vaccines at smaller gap. Okay, so minimum 4 weeks gaps should be there between 2 viral vaccines. So here 2 live injectable vaccines must be separated by 4 weeks, because whole your immune system is involved in the response. And hence, when we give the second dose or second vaccine, it will be ineffective. Now, in short, let us discuss the gap between the vaccination. So, two same kill vaccine, 4 weeks gap should be there. Different kill vaccine, no need of gap. It can be given simultaneously or in at any interval between the doses. Two live, injectable or intranasal vaccines must be given simultaneously or at a gap of 4 weeks. Please understand the basics out here. Killed vaccine, if you give, it will go and stimulate the local reaction, will go and stimulate the local lymph node enlargement or a local lymph node response. Whereas injectable vaccine, live, if you are giving it, the whole immune response of our body is activated. And hence, that is the reason why we recommend a 4 weeks gap between two live vaccines. Now, a 1 year child came for pneumococcal vaccine, which should be given, polysaccharide or conjugated. Here we should know the difference between a polysaccharide vaccine action and a conjugate vaccine action. Okay. So before going into the details, one thing we have to know very carefully or very nicely is how does a polysaccharide vaccine act and how does a conjugate vaccine act. Polysaccharide vaccine, suppose you are giving a polysaccharide vaccine to the patient. Okay. This will be taken up and will go and stimulate the cells, the lymph nodes, the marginal zones of the lymph node. Okay. But this will not induce a germinal cell reaction because there is this T cell independent. Please understand this polysaccharide vaccines are T cell independent vaccines. So without T cells, this germinal cell reaction won't happen. Hence what happens? The B cells will undergo maturation, but no affinity maturation happens. So some amount or lesser amounts of plasma cell are produced, lesser antibodies are produced. It will wane off faster also. So he require more and way. So what happens? The antibody response also will wane off. Here we should note that because there are no T cells to stimulate the B cells, the memory cells are not produced. So it does not matter whether it is the first vaccine you are giving or we are giving the dose to a naive person or a vaccinated person. The immune response will remain the same. Certain vaccines like, this is for PGs, please note, certain vaccines like meningococcal is found to have a hyporesponsiveness. That means the second dose when you give, it is found that the immune response is lower, and that is actually called hyporesponsiveness. And hence, we generally don't give another dose of pneumococcal polysaccharide vaccine or a meningococcal polysaccharide vaccine, even if we require a lifelong immunity. Whereas, now let us see how does a conjugate vaccine act. So here if you can see the difference. So polysaccharide is stimulate T cell independent immunity. It stimulates the B cells without the help of T cells. Short-lived immunity, no booster effect, and not consistently immunologic in children younger than 2 years. Why? Yes, I forgot to mention this point. These polysaccharide vaccines are not effective in children less than 2 years. Why is it so? That is because the marginal zones of the lymph nodes are not well developed in children less than 2 years, and hence polysaccharide vaccines will not act for children less than 2 years of age. Now, coming to the conjugate polysaccharide. Coming to the conjugate polysaccharide, how does it act? Conjugate polysaccharides are T cell dependent antigens. So polysaccharide vaccines, once you conjugate with a protein carrier, it becomes a conjugated vaccine. That means it becomes T cell dependent. Here what happens is, once the antigen or the vaccine is given, it not only stimulates the marginal zones, it also stimulates the follicular dendritic cells, causes a germinal cell reaction, and the B cells will undergo affinity maturation also. And hence, they also, with the help of T cells, will also produce memory cells. So what happens? Robust immune response, long-lasting immune response, the memory cell, lots of memory cells. So lots, long-lasting memory cells, long-lasting immunity happens. Okay, and that is why the conjugate vaccines are always better. So if you see from here, It is a T cell dependent immunity. It produces immunological memory. It results in booster effect upon subsequent exposure and increased immunogenicity even in children less than 2 years of age. Here, polysaccharide vaccines will go and stimulate the B cells, but lesser antibodies are produced. Whereas conjugate vaccine, B cells are stimulated and also with the help of T cells, more and more antibodies, more and more high affinity antibodies. Okay, there it is moderate affinity, here it is high affinity antibodies, and also more and more memory cells formation. Now, why are boosters recommended after longer time or an interval? Here we should understand the concepts of affinity and avidity. Affinity means strength of antigen-antibody reaction. Like for example, first diagram, you can see that is an IgG. The affinity is a strength, so much strength is there. Whereas avidity means strength of all the interactions combined. So here if you see, IgM typically has low affinity antigen binding sites, but there are 10 of them. So high affinity is there. You have to give time for the affinity maturation to happen. So if you see from the diagram, the 1 month lesser affinity maturation, 2 months, after a while, the affinity maturation is so much. Okay, and hence you can give a booster so that we get a better affinity maturation. Now another question which you always encounter is, can we give vaccines when once you are given FFP or IVIG? Here, if it is a live injectable vaccine, it should be given either 2 weeks prior to it, or the interval which we can give after it depends upon the antibody content. Generally, suppose you are giving hepatitis B immunoglobulin, at least 3 months we should wait before giving a live vaccine, because otherwise the antibodies which are there in the immunoglobulin will interfere with the immune response. Now coming to the route of administration, vaccines which are recommended to be given intramuscular or intradermal should only be given in that way. Why? Because this IM or the ID cells are very much vascular. We have lots of lymphatic cells out there to take up this antigen, go to the lymph node, stimulate it. So once the vaccines which are supposed to be intramuscular or intradermal should be given only in that way. Whereas sub-Q injection, even if it goes IM, yes, it will be immunogenic. It is more important. This route is more important for live vaccines. It is more important for killed vaccines than for the live vaccines. Now coming to the adverse effects, there are certain adverse effects following live vaccines and following inactivated vaccines. Very important or interesting point here is, following live vaccines, the frequency of the adverse effects will decrease. Why? Because if the antibody, suppose first dose we are giving, the second dose, this antibodies, whatever is there in the body, will neutralize the second dose of some vaccine virus in that subsequent vaccine dose. So the adverse effects are lesser. Whereas in the case of killed vaccine, the frequency of adverse effects will increase. Why is it so? Because the antibody levels are good. So next dose when you give, the local reaction will be more, the adverse effects will be more. This can lead to serum sickness and all with repeated doses of tetanus toxoid. So I hope you have got an overall idea about certain basics of immunization. Please read up. We have got a few books of Nelson is a very good book. Opigai also has given it beautifully, and we have our IAP immunization book where everything, at least postgraduates, I think should read from IAP immunization book also, because very beautifully given in that, and we have to keep revising it also. I hope you have got a clear idea about this. Now, another thing is about vaccine failures. What do you mean by vaccine failure? One is a primary failure, another thing is a secondary failure. Primary failure means, even if you give proper dose of vaccines, the patient is or the individual is not able to have an adequate immune response. Example, 15% of measles recipients are not able to mount up an immune response despite giving the adequate doses. Whereas what is secondary failure? The individual has got initial nice response or good immune response, but actually over a course of time the immunity wanes. For example, pertussis, diphtheria, etc. will wane over a period of time, and hence they may require boosters. So that is the thing. What is a primary vaccine failure and what is a secondary vaccine? Primary is the vaccine baby patient is not able to mount a response, whereas secondary patient has mounted an enough immune response, but the immune response wanes over in a due time, okay, in due course of time. So the take-home messages are: we need not repeat the dose, however longer the interval is. Okay, just continue with the schedule. Longer intervals usually produce better dose. Minimum 4 weeks interval should be there between 2 doses of the same vaccine, and better to give a at least 4 months interval between the priming dose and the booster dose. And the route of administration is very important. One another thing is about the conjugate and the polysaccharide vaccines. So I hope you have got a bit of an idea about the basics of immunization. In further subsequent videos, we will be discussing about the individual vaccines. With these words, I conclude the session. I hope you are benefited with the session, and if you like the session, please do like it, share it, and subscribe. Thank you, and hope you all are staying safe. Take care. Thank you. So let us protect, prevent, and immunize. And once again, thank you. Also acknowledging the help received from the IAP, who have helped us with the making of all the slides and making it such a wonderful trainers of trainers program last year. Thank you so much. Thank you one and all.